So in Daniel chapter 5, going from verse 1 through 9, there is a story of a hand that appears on the wall and begins to write things right in front of a pagan king. And it says that Daniel, the prophet, is called in to interpret what the hand says and to interpret what is being shared with I guess for lack of a better term, the lost, the pagans. And I thought that was just a great illustration of the way things work when we are called to communicate. When we are called to communicate either from singing or rhyming or emceeing or making music, whatever your particular angle is, you are called to interpret what God has shown and what God has spoken to His people and put it in a way, in a fashion that those that are lost can understand it. And if you read in that chapter, it was 4 simple phrases that were written on that wall. And the heathen couldn't understand it one bit. It made no sense to them. The Bible even says that the things of God are foolishness to those that are perishing. But God is also calling us to take those things that seem foolish to the world and to interpret them and make it presented in a way that those that don't know who Christ is, that those that don't know the principles of God can receive from it. The Bible says to some people we are the stench of death and to others the smell of life. And the reality is, if you could picture this, picture a sea and someone drowning in that sea, and you're sitting there holding on to the very life raft that could change their life. It's up to you to throw it in there. It's up to you to make it available. It's up to you to give them that way out, but in a way that they can grasp and hold on to. If someone is 70 feet away in the water and they're drowning, and I just throw the raft in 10 feet away, for me, they can't grasp it. And God is calling us to take the truths of God, make them real, make them understandable, and make it to where people can grasp it, get a hold of it, and understand what God has for them.
All right, so today we are talking about lyric writing and flow of thought. And it's one thing to have a concept, it's another thing to find how to execute that concept in a way that people can grasp. I'll give you a really simple analogy. If I was to sit down with you and wanted you to share with me an experience, I would probably want you to do it in the most concise and to the point way. And a lot of times when it comes to songwriting, lyric writing, things like that, a lot of us when we start out, we don't know how to write within a set parameter amount of lines. And what am I talking about? Well, especially for hip hop, it usually goes in a 16 bar format. And for those that don't know what a bar is, basically the easiest way I communicate that is 2 snare hits in one beat. So if a beat goes, that would be 1 bar. Notice the snare hit twice. That would equal 1 bar. So a lot of times what I do when it comes to songwriting and things like that is I write per line. So I always know whether something is in a 16 bar format or not is I write it till the end of that bar ends. So in other words, if the beat is like I'll be here I go and I'm about to rap, I'll sit on down cause it's like that. That would be 2 bars. So if you write that out, an easy way to do that and make sure you're within that flow is here I am, I'm about to rap, boom, end of the line. And this is how I go and something like that, boom, end of the line. So what you'll usually find is if you write within the 16 bar format in the way you're either typing out your lyrics or putting them in on a piece of paper, etc., if you do that, it will teach you how to write within a certain format. And you're generally going to find that everything in most songs is usually in multiples of 4. So in other words, each verse will usually be about 8 bars, 12 bars, 16 bars. Most choruses are 8 bars long. Most intros are somewhere between 4 bars long. Most outros are anywhere between 4 to 12 bars long. Most bridges are usually 8 bars long. So if you learn to write in a basic format, it will really help you with the flow of thought. And just to give you even a really basic format for songwriting, usually it would go like 4 bar intro, 8 bar chorus, 16 bar verse, 8 bar chorus, 16 bar verse, 8 bar chorus, 8 bar bridge possibly, 8 bar chorus, 4 to 8 bar outro. So if you learn how to kind of write in that format, you're going to get basic writing structure down. Now, going back to the conversation analogy, keep in mind every rhyme you write, every song you do is a conversation with the listener. So if you're going to sit down and talk to me, I would hope that you would speak to me in the most concise manner. So keep in mind, if I say, hey man, you went down the street and you got some milk, tell me how that happened. And it took you an hour to tell that story, I would probably say it's taking you too long. But if you tell the story in a way that not only is concise to the point but interesting, you're going to find that person's going to want to hear more of your stories. And it's the same thing with songwriting, lyric writing, hook writing, anything along those lines. You want to do it in the most concise, to the point manner. So I would challenge you to, if you're going to write in a 16-bar format for songwriting, learn how to get half of that verse wrapped up by 8 bars. So I always look at things like that. So by the 8th bar, which is halfway through the verse, I'm going to now get halfway through what I want to say, and I want to be able to wrap it up by the 16th bar, etc., etc., etc. So good practice for these things is just to get something to talk about, try to write in a 2-verse format, and learn that you try to find out how you can say that in the most concise way in those 2 16-bar verses.